Today, the first two speakers unfortunately had a problem with the visa. One is from Pakistan, and the other one is from Russia. They are wonderful architects. I've been friend of Maxim since '95, and I met in December Taimoor in Doha. He's obviously Pakistani, and I was in love of their work, and I asked them, could you please come? Unfortunately, we had these problems. They had this problem with the visa, but they were very kind, and they are going to talk from their places. The moderator this morning is Ignacio Armella. He's a fantastic professor of philosophy. We had the great honor of having the introduction, the lecture of the introduction of the summer school we made 2 weeks ago, and our students were really in love with his amazing work. And so it's a great pleasure to have him moderating this session. Ignacio, thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Ettore, for this introduction, and I welcome you again for this new day of work in this beautiful conference. I am always glad to, as a part of the Academia Vivarium Novum, to have you here and to participate on these important conferences about how we could restore beauty in our lives. And of course, architecture is a great part of it, a very important part of it. And then today we are having this first table, which will be about architecture, landscape, and traditions. I think it's a very well chosen title and a very important subject. Architect is oftentimes seen as a sort of the trees that grow in a garden or in a forest, and they should be rooted also in the traditions that they try to embody. So it is, in fact, a very important thing. Now I will directly pass to the first speaker, who is already waiting for us on Zoom. He, unfortunately, as Ettore already said, wasn't able to be here with us. His name is Taimoor Khan Mumtaz. He's from Pakistan. He's a senior architect in the Kamil Khan Mumtaz architecture study, and he's also the founder and director of the Hastonist Institute for the Study of Traditional Arts and Culture. So he will be speaking about his work and maybe also about the way in which we can find in these traditional studies, in the traditions that are rooted in every territory and every part of the world, an inspiration to continue to create beautiful things that are in harmony with the place in which they grow. So please welcome him with an applause, and if everything is ready, we can put him in the screen. Valentina, Omnia Benevent. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have just preparing some things. So I would like just to add something that I was thinking about this morning, because in fact, as I said, landscape and architecture are two things that should come together. And I am a professor of philosophy, as Ettore said, so I cannot do but go back over and over again to these disciplines that I study with the students here in the Academia Vivarium Novum. And a very important concept in ancient philosophy is the concept of cosmos. Cosmos is a word that we even use today, you know, but I think we lost the real meaning of it. Cosmos is the order that comes out of different elements that are put together in harmony. You see, just like in that painting that you see in the ceiling, those of you who already participated at the visit, at the tour of the villa, maybe you already know this, but in that beautiful painting, you can see many gods. One of them, for example, is Gaia, the earth that you see here there with the crown. And of course, she represents this first primordial element. There's another god that you see, Neptunus or Poseidon, who represents the water. He's the one with the beard who is offering gems and jewels to Aphrodite. Then you see also the chariot of the sun, which represents fire. And in the other side, you see Iris, that's the rainbow, but in this case, she represents the air. So you see these four elements are usually also in contrast. They can create disorder. They can also create fire or maybe earthquakes or other things of the sort. But when the principle of harmony, that is Aphrodite, Venus, the goddess of love and of beauty, is in the middle, they come together in cosmos. They come together in a body which is beautiful because it's harmonious. And I think that's a very important concept that we have to remind over and over again. In any case, they have to restore the Zoom. So please welcome our next speaker with an applause.
Thank you very much for those wonderful words. I do hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you very well. Please continue.
Thank you so much. So I'll just start straight away. Thank you to Professor Torre, Professor Luigi, and the Academy Vivarium Novum for inviting me to this conference in memory of Léon Krier. It is a great honor indeed. I shall begin with a statement from Neil Postman describing today's technological context and how our firm's work situates itself in this context. Technology, the surrender of culture to technopoly, the surrender of culture to technology, is a book by Neil Postman published in 1992 that describes the development and characteristics of a technopoly, which is really the world that we are living in today. He defines a technopoly as a society in which technology is deified, meaning the culture, I quote, the culture seeks its authorization in technology, finds its satisfactions in technology, and takes its orders from technology, end of quote. Technology in a time of technopoly actively eliminates all other thought worlds. Thus, it reduces human life to finding meaning in machines and technique. In today's Pakistan, some degree of digital as well as mechanical/artificial processes are a fact of life. Added to this is the increasing speed and amount in which both digital and artificial processes are inundating the building profession. In the case of our architectural practice, Kamil Khan Mumtaz Architects, we make a conscious effort to minimize both the influence of digital tools on design and the use of artificial/machine-produced materials in our buildings. This is with a view to creating a materially responsible, ecologically sustainable, and humanly uplifting built environment. The principal of the firm, Kamil Khan Mumtaz, is a leading voice on appropriate and conscientious architecture in Pakistan. I feel blessed in having him as my father and mentor. Today's presentation has two parts. The first presents a theoretical background for our work, and the second, a sampling of 3 projects where I was responsible for the design. We describe our work as practicing tradition, because for us, tradition is a living reality, which needs to be understood as theory, believed in one's heart, and lived through one's practice. And the word tradition, here the word tradition is not used in its common dictionary meaning as something carried down from the past. By tradition, one means a theocentric civilization rooted in a divine revelation. The Quran says, wheresoever you turn, there is the face of God. But when we look around, we see only things. The purpose and aim of tradition, traditional art and architecture, in fact, of all traditional civilization, is to reinstate the lost vision of the face of God in things. A vision which sees through the veil of creation to the timeless reality beyond. I'll quote from a parallel tradition to from my own context, from the Bhagavad Gita, which explains this beautifully, where God speaks in the first person. It all seems real, but as it is constantly changing, it is not real. Due to this Maya mentality, the illusion that the world is real, people do not look beyond the veil of illusion to me, the unchanging consciousness, the absolute reality, the very basis of it all. Now, tradition aims to regain this vision through its wisdom teachings, which include a theoretical framework or metaphysical doctrine and a spiritual practice. One of the means of combining the two in this transformation of vision is through the practice of traditional art and architecture. Traditional art serves both as a support for spiritual practice and as a reminder, a reflection, and expression of this sought-after vision of the beauty, harmony, and unity, underlying beauty, harmony, and unity of creation as a reflection of the source of creation. A common sort of way of discussing this within the arts in our part of the world, which is the Persianate civilizational sphere, is through the terms majaz and haqiqa. Majaz means symbol and haqiqa means the reality which the symbol expresses. So I quote from a traditional source. This is from the court of Akbar the Great. Islamic art and architecture, in the veil of majaz, the symbol unveils reality. Thus unveiling the underlying unity and harmony of creation, which reflects the unity and perfection of the Creator. The masterpiece of Mughal architecture from southern Punjab, southern Pakistan, Shah Jahan's mosque in Thatta. I'll now move to the second part of my introduction. The scenario just described is enough reason for the practice of tradition. But I would now add why such practice is not really a choice, but a necessity in our reading of today's context. Continuing with the Bhagavad Gita, this illusion, this curtain of illusion, Maya, is hard to see through, Arjun. Only those who love and depend completely on divinity are eventually able to see through it. And further on in the same passage, those who are unable to see beyond the veil cannot, in effect, discriminate between real and not real. Oblivious to the reality of their own higher nature, the true self within, they sink to their lower nature. I'll now try to, as in the introduction, Professor was talking about the macrocosm and the microcosm, and the traditional worldview, I'll express it in a diagram. The source is the divine, and both the macrocosm and the microcosm originate in the Spirit of God, which underlies both, which unites both. So behind the physical and psychic aspects of the human being and the world, there is the metaphysical, spiritual aspect. And the purpose of mankind, and that aspect of the spirit or intellect in the original scholastic meaning of intellect, as opposed to ratio or the reason, is also called the eye of the heart in the Islamic tradition. As you can see here, the man in the lower cosmos has his heart illumined. So the purpose of the human being is to, through spiritual practice, activate the eye of the heart so he can see the face of God in the world, and also to realize his own higher nature. The worldview described in this diagram and the accompanying illustration, defining the nature of the world and the place and purpose of mankind within it, was shattered, discredited, and overturned by the adoption of René Descartes' scientific method, which split the world and with it the human being into quantity and quality, res extensa and res cogitans, thus inaugurating the birth of Western modernity. I'll summarize this quickly in a couple of diagrams. The world is reduced to the physical extension, res extensa, and the human being is split into mind and body because we have banished the spirit from the discussion, which unites both the macrocosm and the microcosm, and then unites both of those to the source, to God. So once the world was reduced to matter alone and man to his body and desires, as man is split into body and soul, and the world into quantities and qualities. The qualities are put into the subjective. Galileo did the same in his development of the scientific method, that only that pertains to the thing is its quantitative aspect. And then again, the soul is divided into the rational and the emotional, and it is reason which can mathematically study quantities, while the qualities are artificially put into as a subjective side of creation. If this split hadn't taken place, there would have been no scientific revolution, can be argued. And this is the split between science and art, and the split between reality and art, split between all the splits that we see in the modern world. So once the world was reduced to matter alone and man to his body and desires, the stage was set for the indiscriminate plunder of the earth's resources to fulfill the limitless greed of the powerful through the creation of unlimited wants. The end result is the catastrophic disbalance of the Earth's ecosystem and the denaturing of the human being. Therefore, turning to mankind's timeless wisdom traditions and the accompanying practices is not a sentimental fetishing of tradition, but arguably the only way forward to sanity and fulfillment for the individual and society, and the aversion of certain destruction for the world. In this evaluation of the current situation, we see our work not as a return to the past, but as a reawakening to the ever-present reality. So this brings to an end my theoretical first half. Now I'll turn to our work, and it's I now present 3 projects while also trying to illustrate why this section is titled Practice of Tradition, Combining Theory and Practice. In our work, space is organized through the application of the archetypal grammar of classical Mughal architecture, namely the Hasht Bahisht or 8 paradise plan form, which governs not only the ground plan, but also the elevations and sections as illustrated in this diagram. There is a hierarchical, centralized organization of the plan. And this also applies to residential architecture, where the central space becomes a courtyard and the sky becomes the dome, practically. This also governs the elevations, with 4 corners being double-storied and the central Ivan being double height, and it goes on into the section as well. So after now, within this grammar, then you come to the design methods. And the essence of traditional design methods is proportion, which is used as a mean for achieving harmony. In Arabic, Farsi, and Urdu, it translates to tanasub, the word used by Imam Ghazali. Imam Ghazali al-Ghazal, who influenced the scholastic theologians, including St. Thomas Aquinas. So he was an 11th century theologian, philosopher, and mystic from Baghdad. In his chapter on the Sufi spiritual concert musical gathering, he says, the transcendent world or the metaphysical world, heaven, is the world of loveliness and beauty. And the source of loveliness and beauty is proportion, tanasub. It is sometimes also translated as harmony. An analysis of buildings and practice, an analysis of let me just show you an analysis of a building in the Taj Mahal complex. This is one of the 2 smaller shrines in the Taj Mahal forecourt. And here you can see how it is designed using geometrical proportioning. An analysis of buildings and practices of hereditary master masons show that the traditional design process harmonized geometric proportioning with modular grid systems, or the checkered sort of graph. These methods converted geometrically derived irrational measurements into whole number measurements, commensurable with the prevailing unit of measure, the standard imperial gauge or cubit in the case illustrated here. As you can see, all the dimensions, when transposed to the Shahjahani or Ilahi gauge, the imperial cubit, fall into whole numbers, whereas the building itself is designed using geometry. Now we'll turn to the master craftsman. Just one. This is Babur, the first Mughal emperor, laying out a garden. This is his architect holding a drawing board with a graph drawn upon it. Learning from contemporary master masons. These few pages are from a manuscript of nearly 125 pages. The first date mentioned is 5th March 1922 and the last as 17th July 1964. And here you can see how geometry and modular methods are used simultaneously. Here are, in words, he's written the proportions of this bay window, making an arch using a string and nails. These are modules of 6-fold and 12-fold designs, very common throughout northern India for wooden lattices. This is a method using a string to draw an ellipse. This is an analysis of a 17th century arch by this mason. And here you can see the lower portion of a bay window using modular proportioning. These are drawings from the 1970s from another master mason. Again, you can see geometry is used both as proportioning and as a tool for laying out forms. And now the next drawing is just looking at this finial, the inverted lotus element in classical subcontinental Islamic architecture. And here you can clearly see the use of proportion lying behind. So it's a continuous 1,000 years of practice, which unfortunately has been absent from the architectural schools for the last 100 years or more. And in the end, I had the fortune of becoming a pupil of this master mason, Haji Abdul Aziz. And he talks about proportion, how the parts are related to the whole, and how the designer reflects in his creativity the quality of God, the creator. Now I'll proceed to the first project, which is a small mosque in a housing scheme. And part of the precedent study is of 17th century medium-sized Shah Jahan period mosques from Lahore. The first was commissioned by the royal historian Saleh Kambo in 1659. The second was commissioned by the wet nurse of Jahangir, father of Shah Jahan. She lived into Shah Jahan's period and commissioned many projects and gardens and mosques. This is another medieval 1669 mosque. And other studies, it synthesizes into our sort of concept proposal. The left is trying to apply a 20th century master mason's system of proportioning. On the right, the elevation is based on a 17th century mosque. The construction doesn't use any Portland cement nor any steel. It uses hydraulic and hydrated limes and arches and domes. As it stands today, some of the people who worked on it. There's master fresco artist who's passed away, Ustad Rafaqat and his pupil, then Ustad Jafar and his pupil, and then hereditary tile makers from Sindh, and another young master mason from Multan. And this particular element was based on drawings from Iran and then visualized by our interns and so on and so forth. This is one of the side domes. The drawing was made by a calligrapher, the arabesque. The calligraphy was done by a calligrapher trained in Turkey. Then the fresco was done by the fresco master and his team, whereas the gold leafing was done by another expert. And in the end, I'll just show you the central dome. The dome geometry is based on the earliest Mughal mosque in Lahore from Akbar the Great's time. But on site, the geometry was laid out by Ustad Jafar, who's passed away now. I'll quickly show you a few images each of two houses, recent houses. The entrance foyer for this house. Again, in this house, there's no cement, steel, only domes and arches and line. This is done by a wonderful stucco artist, a young craftsman. And then wood carving is very good still in our part of the world. This is based on a study of traditional balconies. There's some stonework, stone inlay, and stone carving. Now I'll move on to the last project, which is just recently finished. In the foreground is the boundary wall, and in the background is the elevation. Here, the roofing system used concrete because of bylaws, building regulation, height regulations. On the left is the entrance foyer, marble and sandstone inlay, based on a design from Fatehpur Sikri. This is a composite structure using concrete beams and brick domes and finished with fresco, based on medieval models from Mughal architecture. This is the basement court, sandstone wall with marble inlay, and this is a bridge with stucco work underneath it. In conclusion, I'll talk about our institute, Astanist, Institute of Traditional Studies and Arts, with which I am attached, consists of 5 centers: a center of the arts, a center of languages, a center of metaphysics, philosophy, a center of history and cultural studies, and finally, a center of architecture, named after Ustad Ahmad Memar Lahori, who's arguably the architect of the Taj Mahal, and certainly one of the 2 architects of the Red Fort in Delhi, as evidenced in the imperial history. The aim of the institute is to train artists, architects, and others in the theoretical and practical aspects of traditional art and architecture, so that they are able to help create a harmonious and meaningful environment, which is not only sustainable for the earth, but also sustains and nourishes the hearts, minds, and souls of those living in and using these environments. And I'll end with a quotation from Dante's Paradiso to show that this concept of this worldview is common to the East, traditional East and traditional West. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khan, for your beautiful presentation and for showing us what does it mean to practice tradition there in Pakistan and also in the great tradition of which you are a part. I have always thought that Islamic art is a very good example of what I was saying before, that it is not only about calculation, but it's calculation with the spirit that creates beauty. Because we have some patterns that seem the same in many different Islamic architecture types and in many different buildings, but they are always showing through the unity of proportion, the multiplicity of what the world is. While I was listening to your presentation, I was thinking of this very important text in medieval and Renaissance philosophy here in Europe, which is the Asclepius. It's a very important text that also has some connections with the Islamic philosophy. And there we read that God, the Creator, He who is one and who is Kreiton onomatos, meaning greater than any name that can be given to Him, He wanted to create a sort of second God, they call it, the cosmos, the world, because he liked to impress, to print his face in this world that we see around. But then there was the need of a third element, someone who could contemplate this world. So he created the microcosmos, that is a human being. So this reminds us on how tradition, even if it takes different shapes, different colors, different aspects all around the world, it's rooted in the same human nature, which is one and the same. And it was, in fact, one of the Mughal emperors. You show us very beautiful examples of Mughal art, and it was Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar, who in his reign, he gathered many people from different religions, not only of his empire, but also from European religions. He gathered even Christian Jesuits in his Ebodat Khane, in his house of praise, no? Of devotion, and they gathered to discuss about those universal aspects that we can find in different traditions that are the expression and the essence of what is to be a human being. And he was hoping and dreaming to gather all these traditions into one. So we were very happy, Mr. Han, to listen to your conversation, to your presentation. We are very sad that you were not able to be here this year, but hopefully you will come sometime here to our academy when the type of words that you gave to us are like food to our souls. So you will find here many young students from all around the world who are very eager to listen to what tradition, also from Pakistan, we have students, of course, who are eager of listening to how a modern world can be renewed by looking not to the past, as you said very well, but into the deepness of the present universal reality. So thank you very much again for this beautiful presentation. We will wait for you as soon as you can. Now, without further ado, I would like to open the floor to the next speaker, who is Maxim Atayants. He is originally from Armenia, and he lives in Russia. He did his studies in the Academy of Arts of Russia, and also in the foundation, Prince of Wales Foundation. And besides being the head of a studio of architects under his name, he's also a very good and excellent researcher and admirer of ancient antiquities. So he goes all around the world looking for also ancient architect to draw and to present in many exhibitions that he has promoted and be a part of all over the world. We are very sad again that he was not able to be here. We met him during this last years, and he's also a very good, an excellent person, and we are very proud of being friends with Maxim. So if everything's ready for I will ask Julian to open the floor for him. Omnia bene? Mm-hmm. Okay. So as I was saying, during the last years, I think twice or thrice, he was able to come here, Maxim, to our academy. It was very beautiful to see him in the breakfast. Many of you may be also acquainted with him, but during the breakfast, our students were very amazed because at some point he just took out his notebook and began to draw some very beautiful drawings about ancient architecture and ancient ruins also. So this is something that links Maxim also with the spirit of our academy. This belief that through the study of ancient arts, we can also renew modern arts. You know that also the Renaissance architecture and the Renaissance, the Italian and European Renaissance was born out of this sort of admiration and emulation of the past. There is no given humanist in the Quattrocento and Cinquecento that didn't thought to be a sort of imitator, but also who was trying to surpass a figure of the ancient Greek and Roman tradition. We have, for example, Leo Battista Alberti, who thought of himself to be the new Vitruvius. And as you know very well, he wrote also treatises on the architecture. And we have also even Copernicus, who in the field of sciences, he thought that he was bringing back to life all the scientific theories of the Pythagoreans about the motion of the earth and about the fire in the middle of the universe. So he thought that the Pythagoreans were already speaking about heliocentrism, and he thought that he was just discovering something that had been said before. And this is a very particular example, because if you consider what is more new, what is more representative of the disruption that modernity has with the past than the scientific revolution that began partly also with Copernicus. With the Copernican revolution, it's also a very common metaphor that we use in different fields of culture. But what we tend to forget is that this revolution was possible just because Copernicus and the people of those ages were looking back to ancient traditions, trying to assimilate them. Because it's not about imitating, I am sure that you have dealt with this problem many, many times in your careers. People saying to you that you are just copying things that have been already been done. So there is no originality in the work that we try to do. But it's not the case. Now I will open the floor to Maxim Atayants. Thank you very much. Oh, okay, so we'll just have some problems with sharing the screen, but I am, okay, very well. Welcome, Maxim.
I still cannot manage to share the screen, but I will use this possibility first of all to greet everybody, dear colleagues and dear friends and dear everybody. Again, it's a greatest pity for me to don't be with you directly there in this excellent space, in this excellent place. And thank you for such a great introduction. And I still don't understand how to share the pictures, because we're here mostly architects, and we used to talk
Hello,
through
Maxim.
the image.
Do you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So there should be an icon at the center down in the window of Zoom, a green icon with a
Share. Yes.
Did you find it?
Yes. And I think now I can do this. Select window.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maxim, and thank you for your patience.
Okay.
We had some.
It's your patience, not mine. Well, now.
So wait a minute. I will go back to the to check either something. No.
So
we still
what
cannot
do you
see
know?
your screen. Echo, yes, perfect. Now it's working. Perfect. Very well.
Yes. So
Yes,
now
we see
finally, instead of my face, you can see some pictures finally. So last years, where it was a great possibility to be among you, I used to talk about church buildings, and last year it was something about the built new traditional architecture in the historical context. And now I will bear a risk to talk about some very maybe boring part of our profession, how to work in a real commercial development while trying to keep your own aesthetic values and to keep the classical language, and how to use classical language in such a difficult real development commercial architecture of mass housing or mass market or whatever else. And so it's a risk, because this is much more difficult than than if you are build some unique small things. But still we have to do this, and so I will be brave enough to share the thing, some of my recent works to the judgment of my friends and colleagues. So this is a typical picture of middle of nowhere. This is the central part of Russia, very historical heart of the country, near the city with the millennia history named Vladimir, and this is the immediate neighborhood of the city, and this is the city itself. It is beautiful with the beautiful mix of medieval church architecture and a neoclassic fabric of 18th and 19th centuries, and also of the middle of last century. And this is a typical city fabric. So we try to keep the same language, the same for these suburban parts near the woods. The client and me decided to keep the apartment blocks up to 3 or 4 levels, providing the traditional uh, urban fabric as on the screen now. This is some samples of the central part of the city of Vladimir. And this is the number of examples of the architecture of the small apartment blocks, traditional for Central Russia for 19th century and also the middle of 20th century. Like this, and this is the visualization of the master plan. You can see the school, you can see the small urban blocks with the isolated courtyards and the church and kindergarten. And this is quite modest, everything, but let me show you a little bit more on that. And just to show that this is a real architectural things, there are some small apartments, and this is the plans of the apartments and the floors with this little bit irregular shape of the buildings. And the type of elevations is quite typical for the Russian local version of neoclassic, when they use the plaster and also painted plaster and bricks, sometimes in a mix together. And the usual way is to show the structural order elements like columns, pilasters, cornices, rustication with a whiter off-white color and with some bright or almost bright colors or bricks as a background, as the wall colors. And so there are some different pieces of the elevations. And of course, the ground floors toward the streets are occupied by commercial and public spaces to provide the interesting routes through the city fabric with some points of attraction, as you can see. There are different things. And there are some visualizations of this project. Sorry. And here the character of this architecture, I think, is quite visible, is of human scale, and we try to add some detailization, which is quite modest because this is a regular city fabric, not just a blockbuster buildings, but just some decoration for the city space for people, and the goal was to provide people with the image, recognizable image of their own houses, so they can distinct their houses and the apartment blocks from the neighbors. And to provide a place where they can live quietly and let's say in some normal, traditional, relaxing surrounding, which is so important in our our times, as always. So this is the sample of, let's say, normal situation when there is an empty space and the developer invites architect to provide a master plan, to provide the planning and the everything complete as an architectural task from the master plan to the details of the facade or the elevation. But this is normal for us, but almost ideal situation. But unfortunately, sometimes in our time when everybody tries to disintegrate the integrity of the architecture as a profession. For example, they try to divide the master planning from the architecture. They divide the design from the architecture, from the master planning, and they believe that master plan is something about traffic uh, or industrial things. And now we move from the city of Vladimir to St. Petersburg, which I believe the most of you are quite acquainted. And this is the typical image of St. Petersburg, which is entirely neoclassic by origin. And we can see the central part. But this is also St. Petersburg, and even not just a suburban area. The street here is one of the main prospects, and this is a strange gap just in the middle of the city, with unfortunately ugly, typical new development, which you can see on the screen. And the task the developers invited us when unfortunately already they decided the character of space and the character of volumes. Now, in the late of my 50s, now I know the new term massing is something which somebody invented and trying to give you to decorate. Let's see how it looks. So they already decided with the city authorities the number and the distribution of volumes of the buildings and everything. So it was a challenge how to proceed with this, because it's from the first glance it looks terrible, and from second too. So what we try to do, we try to think about the language of this part of the city, which was built in 1930s and 1950s in neoclassic of the middle of 20th century. And so the result for the moment is this. So this is they try to do here the big trading center or city mall with some extra housing over it, some office center and some housing there on different heights. So what how it looks. This is the real photos of this part of the city. with our proposal here. Here, the language which was chosen by architects is extremely hard neoclassic because of the character of big street where the all the buildings which were built century ago are of this even a little bit pompous character with a very formal elements. So we try to follow and going into this space, we tried to provide more human scale and more human friendly look of this architecture. There is some detailization. And, also, the important problem of nowadays market development, market demand is that, which is in contradiction with some immediate classical solutions, is that they want to use a lot of glazing on the elevations. They believe that the people like a lot of panoramic glass and everything. Me personally, not with this, and I think it's a little bit bizarre. But since we are talking now about the compromise between the market demand and the developer thoughts and what we can do in our best. So the problem is how to build when they want and they demand a lot of glazing. And this is one of the solutions when we can see the colonnade and the intercolumnium spaces on the three levels, divided by three levels, with the contrast between two scale, the big scale of the building itself and the small order elements for each level of apartments as a balconies, but not not an open balconies because of climate and the character and the sound of the huge prospect nearby. So it's all covered by glass, but still this is some small ridiculous for any given particular apartment. Well, coming the new another one, some we can see the this part of St. Petersburg. You can see the typical urban fabric of this area with the neoclassic buildings of medium size, like 6 or 7 levels high, with some towers. And all this is about 1950s. And next to this quite nice area is situation the industrial area where it's nothing but the old industrial buildings semi-destroyed. And unfortunately, as you can see in this corner, this is a typical nowadays commercial development with the apartment blocks which looks like this. And so even the developers sometimes understand that there is a demand for some beauty or for some visual diversity, at least among this. Speaking about this industrial era, they decided to build this number of apartment blocks, and the situation is a little bit bizarre because inside the big development company, they have their own project bureau, own architectural bureau, and they already invented not just the master plan, but almost everything, including all the floor plans, all the apartments, and even the rhythm of windows, doors, and everything. Usually, in this situation, I adamantly refuse to participate because this is the level of disintegration of our architectural profession that is unbearable. But here, since the distribution of blocks and volumes was not as ugly as it might be in this situation, usually we decided to bear the risk to participate, thinking that the challenge is how to work with the situation when the glazing percentage is absolutely out of any classical proportion, because we know that in any classical building there is a wall where the windows are cut in, but here they prefer to do as modernist architects last decades to build the wall of glass with some minor elements. So what we can do with this using the classical language? So this is the question, and the result is on the screen. This is the elevation, and we decided to use the colonnade structure and divide this by two levels by cornice, and use a mix of scale in order architecture for some private small edicolous and the big columns or pilasters through all the facade. And with the uniform character of the public spaces on the ground and first floor, and then decided to paint in different colors, basic colors and different colors, the different blocks. So you can see the character of this architecture. So, then this is the photo of what it seems like to be a result of this work. And the entrance area looks more in the character of the 20th century neoclassics of St. Petersburg. So it's the character is familiar for any pedestrian who is walking through this surrounding. And we tried to find something new, in a sense that if you can look at these columns here, and the cornices are step by step rising, using this character of elements, and this is which we invented with joy as a maybe new element. And the silhouette looks like this, with some vases and even obelisks there, which is also usual for this part of the city. And the color is slightly different from the gross and dark and very developed colors on the bottom, through the more delicate colors and paints toward the skyline. Well, I think uh, I try to don't bother you too much with these things, but in the conclusion, I would say that of course, it's much more comfortable to work with a private client or to work for the church when you are a master of architecture and you have nothing with the commercial use, with all these um, capitalistic calculations of market demands and everything. But development is also a part of architecture nowadays, and for me, it was important to share with you how we try to keep clearness and clarities of our aesthetic ideals through this strange character of commissions. Maybe next year, and I hope to be with you directly next year for such a brilliant conference. I will speak about something else, but for the moment, that's it. And I'm eager and a little bit even afraid to show this for the judgment of such a brilliant friends and colleagues. Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much, Maxim, for this important presentation and for all these remarks that, coming from you, of course, as an expert, are very valuable on how to find this balance between the requirements and also the the project of the architects. So now we have some time for some questions, if someone has, or 5 minutes, because we accumulated a little bit of delay. But we still have the opportunity to speak to both speakers. So if anybody wants to put some question or make any commentary, the floor is open. Please come here so that they can hear you.
As regards the combination of this commercial aspect with keeping some, let's say, architectural principles, which are the major obstacles you face in keeping this balance?
Thank you. I think, first of all, the problem is that they try to disintegrate the architecture. They try to make a master plan using some specialists and then pass it to architects when the volumetric things already designed. So they try to minimize the architect to be as a sort of designer of the illustrations. And this, for me, is one of the most serious problems. Also, of course, as all of us who are trying to keep the beautiful aesthetic of neoclassics or traditional architecture, we understand that the difficulty is that they decided that market wants a modern architecture, so-called modern architecture, or some parametric architecture, and so trying to find some commissions sometimes it's a struggle itself. But even when developers asking you to do something, there are few obstacles. First of all, the disintegration of the very professional architect, trying to break it on a pieces like wall design, facade design, master plan, etc., etc. And the next is the number of regulations which are written on modernistic base. This is also important. The regulations of natural light, of insulation, of whatever else, recently based on modernistic principles, and so it's another serious obstacle to build the traditional and beautiful.
Many thanks for this answer. Another question to Mr. Khan Mumtaz. As regards the worldview and the image of the human you presented in the beginning of your presentation, when we look at your Western image of the human, which are the most serious consequences in your eyes as regards recent architecture, and what could be improved when compared this recent image of the human from the West with, let's say, your Islamic image of the human you presented?
Thank you very much for that. Very good question. Obviously, there wasn't time enough really to go into any detail, but the diagrams sort of that I showed, in our view, the modern Western image of man is a reduced image, because the most important part, which is the divine, the spiritus, is missing. So how can you define something without its essence being there? Because the psyche and the spirit are now conflated since the Cartesian sort of worldview taking over and the decline. I think this starts from the Renaissance, and I think one should look at the Renaissance really as a break from the quote unquote, as we look at tradition, which is a more holistic view, you could say more scholastic in terms of your tradition, but for the Islamic and other medieval traditions, I think that's the biggest, and one other cultural result of this Cartesian bifurcation is when you reduced the person to the individual, the personality, the psyche, then you have relative, your philosophies become relative, and value becomes a individualistic society. So I could sort of, in one sentence, summarize what I find as a foundational given in modern Western society is that what is true, science will tell us, and what is important, I will tell you. So there's extreme individualism combined with extreme materialism. So I think this is not tenable, doesn't match the way things have been for millennia. So I think this is my sort of answer to your question.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other question? Please come here so that they can see you.
First, thank you, Professor Taimoor and Maxim, for sharing all the works. It's always so great to hear from you. And I think I have specifically a question maybe for Maxim. And thank you so much for sharing those projects. I think it takes a lot of courage. And sincere efforts to be reconciling the commercial world and our aspirations to bring those humanistic values of architecture into the commercial world. So my question as the new generation of practitioners is, I think for me there's two ways of working with that commercial pressure. So one is working within still the framework of making architecture, and the other one is perhaps I was wondering if you have any students or colleagues that's going maybe into the other side, like maybe going into development or working in different ways to bring that the classical or the humanistic aspects into architecture, but not as architectural practices. So that is one question, and the other question is what are kind of the reconciliations or compromising values, or maybe it's not the best way to put it as compromising value, but what are kind of the stories or lessons you tell yourself to remember when you're working with this very, it's the very commercial world. So if it makes sense, yeah.
Well, thank you. I think the most important for architect in front of this commercial development and in front of the absolutely different values than is to be brave enough to know, even if they bring a lot of money, and to ask corrupt you, literally, to build something which you will be ashamed after, to be an author. So if it's a question of reputation, and I'm trying to don't build anything I will be ashamed afterward. And if I see that the Commission has inside some demands which are critically dangerous for me, I will refuse to do that. This is a really serious principle, and this is important. As for the way of attack this modernist urban fabric from different destinations, not from architectural, but from some development, from inside the development. I think my way to participate in this is to show that the result of the classical language in commercial development might be successful from financial point of view for the client because of the classic language. Because people need this as strong as some glass of water in the desert, because they need beauty. Human being needs beauty always, and after any given successful result of I don't say even beautiful, I say normal, traditional classical architecture provided for people, when they realize that nowadays they are not kidnapped by the modernism, but they can buy apartment in a normal traditional surrounding, it usually so successful that it turns mind of some more and more developing companies to this direction. Maybe this is the answer for your question.
Okay. Taimoor, I'm so happy to see you, unfortunately, only through Zoom, as well as Maxim. I was really hoping to have both the two of you here, because you know how much I'm in love with the amazing work you're doing. So I want to thank you for your profound and brave, in case of Maxim, speeches, which are extremely useful. I don't know if you have had any chance to attend the previous conferences in the first 2 days, but in some way, both your intervention are intimately connected because we are dealing with the needs of changing the rules, if I think about Maxim's presentation. And clearly, these rules are made by politicians after the advisors that are architects. And the architects are thinking in some way because they are educated in that way. So the idea of regenerating the way of teaching is fundamentally important. And for this reason, I'd like to underline to Taimoor how much here people fell in love with your speech and how much they found the incredible affinity with the program they are running here in the Accademia Vivarium Novum. For this reason, it's more than urgent to have a connection between the two institutions, because the idea of the Accademia is to have a worldwide campus of humanities, and having the Eastern world totally connected with the Western world under the umbrella of the beauty and the common goods is fundamentally important. For this reason, and then at this point, we will move largely in advance to have the possibility to obtain the visa and all the permission. I want to anticipate that both of you must be here because next year the program will be totally dedicated to one of the most important problems we have, which is the religious architecture. I'm talking about the Italian religion architecture more than your country, where your buildings are still intimately connected to the liturgy and to the very needs of being close to God. And so it will be a conference dedicated to any religious architecture, and we need to have the principal actors. And if I think about your mosque, Taimoor, or the Armenian or the Orthodox churches built by Maxim, it's something that we can't avoid to see and to divulge, at least in my own country. So thank you again for your wonderful participation. We will keep in touch and we will let you know as soon as possible in order to be ready for the next year, roughly in the same period. Thank you very much.
So I am informed that because of the delay that we accumulated for technical problems, we will anticipate the coffee break. We will have it now. I kindly ask you to keep it within 15 minutes, and then we will come back for Vitor Ilidio's speech. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. We are now for the last session of this morning. As I anticipated, we will have the last speaker of the last session before the break. We will have him now. So let me introduce to you Vitor Ilidio, a very young but very also talented architecture and urbanist who studied in the Catholic University of Paraná and also was the winner of the prize for young talents that our academy, along with Ettore and his team, organized in the 2025. So now I give the floor to him. Thank you very much.
So, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, it's a great honor to be here in such a special place in the presence of such esteemed professionals. and to have the opportunity to speak about traditional architecture. Well, with gratitude, I dedicated this presentation to God and to my family, especially to my mother and brother. I would like to greet the Academia Vivarium Novum, Signora Alessandra Massini and Signore Miraglia. The traditional architecture group represented by Miss Georgia Cristea, and the School of Architecture at the University of Notre Dame and its professors. With deep admiration for Léon Krier, whose work taught us that architecture can and should be more beautiful, human, and sustainable, I would like to begin this presentation. Well, I'll explain the creation process of the corner building from more a sensory and intuitive perspective, sharing my personal experience alongside a professional approach. International precedents. Well, starting from the principle that precedents are necessary to inspire and guide us, about 3 years ago, I remember flipping through the pages of Enta magazine and coming across something extraordinary. A new city entirely designed with traditional architecture. Buildings. Ciudad Ayala is more than just a beautiful development. It's a cry of hope for the construction of new cities and are more beautiful, walkable, and sustainable. Those carefully ornamented facades, the harmonious combinations of materials, white stucco, stone and wood, clay tiles roofs, and buildings with classical proportions and elements deeply inspired me. Ciudad Ayala. From that moment, I began researching this development and architecture office responsible for the project, Studio Urbano, under the direction of Pedro Godoy and Maria Sanchez, with consultant by Léon Krier. I also drew parallels with the traditional architecture found in Curitiba. Here we see 2 examples of architecture in Curitiba influenced by Mediterranean and classical traditions. On the left, we have the military circle and the Club Dom Pedro II. And on the right, the building that currently houses Hotel Yonchar. We can observe many similarities between these local precedents and the international ones. As a society with strong European influence, our architecture carries reference from several regions of that continent, especially in southern of Brazil, where Mediterranean, Italian, Hispanic, Portuguese, and even German influences are present. Well, after observing these buildings, I sat in front of my computer and began creating a digital sketch. I started with a pair of Tuscan ordered columns, which formed a loggia, then added one floor, then another, refining the design step by step. Well, to contextualize the project site, we are talking about South America, with Brazil shown in gray, the state of Paraná in orange, in green, the municipality of Curitiba. Once again, we see the municipality of Curitiba, green, and the small red point at the center of the circle, very close to the city center, downtown, represents the project site. So here we have the project corner. This large building in the background is a football stadium. The corner is surrounded by a major avenue with intense vehicle traffic and by a smaller street with lighter traffic on the left side. The site measures approximately 15 meters and depth by 25 meters in length. Site plan, implementation. So through the site plan, we can understand the relationship between the buildings. It immediately surrounds the sidewalks and the streets. The corner building was born as a project to correct a corner in my neighborhood. At the time, my knowledge of classical and traditional architecture was still quite limited. Therefore, I relied on the three basic principles to develop it: observation, proportion, and intuition. Today, I understand the classical architecture has a profound connection with these three premises, and this building is the result of them. I also consider the balance between asymmetry and symmetry, the use of precedents and local materials in parallel with international reference. So we have, in the north facade, we can observe that the proportion of the openings is related to the aesthetic hierarchy of each floor. On the ground floor, the openings are slightly large than those on the second floor, which in turn are larger than those on the third floor. The orange lines highlight the symmetry, considering an odd number of arcs and openings. In red, we can analyze the proportion, height, and corresponding hierarchy between the floors. In designing the building, I also consider what many describe as a base, middle, and top. A strong base with a prominent corner, a middle section that creates a gentle transition between floors, and a delicate, soft, and inviting top. North elevation. Here we have the rendered north facade. We can observe that the center emphasis with taller openings and balcony railings that draw attention to this area. This helps clearly define where the building entrance is located. On the west facade, I decided to work with asymmetry while still maintaining balance, something very present in Mediterranean architecture, especially Hispanic architecture. I believe that this interaction between symmetry and asymmetry, between solids and voids, result in a harmonious composition. In red, we can see a second floor loggia belonging to the cafe or restaurant. Directly above are the windows of the western apartment with a round window at the center, reinforcing the classical and welcome character of the facade. Okay, the east elevation, rendered. Okay. So in the south elevation, or facade, borders the neighborhood property, so openings could not be created. In this case, I choose to mark the openings that could exist under different site conditions. On the left, we can observe the relationship with the neighborhood buildings and the background, the project volume of what would be the stadium. West elevation. On the west facade, we have something similar to what we saw on the south facade. The repetition of the marked openings, except for the terrace, which creates a setback on both the front and side facades. We can also observe the ground floor loggia, which maintains the inviting character of the building. In the background, we see the project volume of the buildings across the street, showing part of the project relationship with its surroundings. Here we have a suggestion of how the floors could be divided. The ground floor, a loggia, which protects against the weather while also creating a sense of safety and relation to the avenue. Have vehicular traffic. We also have a lobby with spaces for stairs and elevator, and 2 large retail spaces that make good use of the street-facing facades. The second floor will have 2 offices and maybe a coffee or restaurant, and the loggia too. And here we have the 3rd floor. On the 3rd floor, we have 2 apartments. Both include bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens, and terraces. The difference lies only in the total area. The western apartment is slightly larger as it includes 1 additional bedroom. So here we have the details. A little more closely, some of the classical elements applied to the project. For these elements, I consider the influence of the Tuscan order, both for the cornice supporting the balconies on the north facades and for the columns. I played a little with the column proportions, making them slightly more robust, and I believe that result became quite interesting. As for the details, they are more prevalent in the Corinthian order, but I also decided to incorporate them here, and I believe they worked very well within the composition. So, finally, some images of the final massing and its interaction with the immediately surroundings. Observer perspective. Behind we have the stadium, a modern stadium, football stadium. West perspective with a loggia or terrace. Here, an invited terrace. I would love to have breakfast or afternoon coffee in this space on a cold but sunny day in Curitiba. So finally, the image that gives the building its name. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vitor, for this interesting presentation. And now, without further ado, I will give the floor to the next speaker, Georgia Cristea. She comes from Romania, and she is the representative, the director of the Romanian delegation of the INTBAU, and also resides in London, so is also a member and the organizer of the TAG, of the Traditional Architecture Group, and she will, is she here? Oh, here. So I give the floor to you. Thank you very much.
No, non ti preoccupa, grazie. Hello. Is it fine, the sound? Yes, now it is. So, hello, and thank you very much for the great invitation to speak in this wonderful conference and this divine place. I will start with a confession. I love buildings, especially the old ones, and fortunately, they allow me to love them back. They are not afraid of being seen closely or being approached, examined in detail, stared at for long periods, and eventually even sampled for further analysis. And if you spend enough time with them, inside and outside, around and within, they will slowly begin to reveal their secrets, the extraordinary wisdom embedded in their fabric, stories of the craftsmen who built them, of their skills, but also of their failures, failures who prompted innovation, adaptation, and improvement. Stories of the rain and of the sun they have endured and how they acquire their well-earned patina. And countless stories about the local building traditions, beliefs, and values they embody, and about how they understand their relationship with the environment. Entering these older ways of seeing and understanding the world can become a fascinating journey. I am Cristea, a conservation architect, and I love buildings because they are among our greatest teachers, if only we are willing to listen to them. Conserving built heritage means more than repairing buildings and prolonging their useful life. It also means learning from them extensively, because they stand as valuable models for future sustainable architecture. Vernacular architecture and more broadly traditional building cultures are inherently sustainable and resilient. They are the product of accumulated knowledge and lived experience, demonstrating how local resources can be used thoughtfully and rationally, and how design can respond effectively to use, climate, and environmental risk. Traditional architecture embraces nature as an ally, not as an adversary. Opening up buildings during conservation works offer a rare opportunity to study historic architecture in depth, revealing materials, construction methods, and traditional techniques often concealed beneath later finishes. Understanding how traditional buildings actually work can help regenerate traditional practice, recover lost knowledge, and revive endangered crafts, some of which now survive only within the historical structures themselves. The tangible and intangible dimension of the past building cultures, cultures once deeply adapted to local environment and balanced with the nature, deserve carefully reassessment and renewed incorporation into contemporary architectural practices. As the French architecture historian François Choix famously observed, we restore to recover our competence to build. Conservation is therefore not only an act of protection, but also a means of preserving collective memory, cultural identity, and architectural intelligence against the disaster of amnesia produced by modern architectural practices. Vernacular buildings demonstrate an extraordinary capacity to fit architecture into its natural surrounding. Rather than attempting to conquer the nature as modern practice often does, they accepted climatic variability and engage constructively with the topography. Their tendency to beat off site of difficult access may partly reflect concerns for security, but perhaps even more importantly, a desire to define territorial identity and the boundaries of the community. The beauty of vernacular architecture has long been dismissed as accidental. Yes, we should recognize that this is truly an outcome of remarkable practical intelligence. Its configuration and local particularities, sometimes transmitted across many generations, possess an enduring validity, born of continuous testing, correction, and adaptation. Before mechanical systems existed, buildings were required to regulate their internal climate throughout their envelopes, spatial organization, and material intelligence. Architects therefore respond visibly and directly to local conditions. The vernacular, it's not a look, it's a discipline. It is architecture as accumulated knowledge. centuries of small correction, transforming necessity into proportion and proportion into beauty. The vernacular matters because it records how form earned its right to exist through use, climate, economy, craft, weathering, and time. It's not nostalgia, not decoration, but intelligence embedded in constructions. Krier and Pennebath offer a particularly illuminating reading of the vernacular dwelling section, revealing several enduring principles of the site-responsive architecture. We have here a Piedmont rural house drawn in section, reminding us once again that vernacular is not a style but a discipline. What emerges is a quiet by sophisticated intelligence, thick local walls storing warmth, roof evolved to ventilate and accommodate storage, balconies and overhangs protecting openings, orientation transforming climate into order, the courtyard functioning simultaneously as an instrument of comfort, work, and cultivation. The section drawing becomes a proof of a compact typology capable of reconciling apparent oppositions, urban and agricultural life, public street and private courtyard, structure and habit, climate and culture. The lesson remain remarkably contemporary. If we seek buildings with dignity, perhaps we should stop inventing in abstraction and begin by listening to what history has already tested, recomposing inherited heritage with clarity, rigor, and discernment, tradition as evidence and reason as refinement. Yet, a building situated within a site involves more than environmental performance of technical adaptation. Drawing on the research of the Veneto architect Sofia Loss, we can observe how a seemingly simply vernacular module, the Barchesa, developed an increasingly complex relationship with its site and surrounding landscape. This evolution was not merely morphological. It marked the gradual unfolding of new layers of meaning and significance. The Barchesa, the traditional Portic rural annex of the Venetian countryside, is profoundly site-responsive, oriented towards sunlight, constructed from local material, and adaptable in both form and use. Defined by its solid northern wall, open southern facade, and generously colonnaded portico, I hope I can use it. It creates an intermediate spatial condition that extends domestic and productive life across threshold of space, season, and time. The Barchesa cannot be understood in isolation. It belongs to the wider agrarian landscape of Veneto, a landscape structured through long territorial axes that still bear witness of ancient system of land division. From the loggia and central hall of villas and their garden, these axes extend outwards into the countryside. Perpendicular to them were arranged the rural annexes, the Barchese, together with ditches, tree alignments, and successive spatial plans, guiding the eye progressively towards the horizon, like in those two examples. The Barchesa, therefore, exceeds mere functionality. It becomes a fundamental component of the Civiltà delle Ville, the historic and cultural system that developed around Venetian villas between the 15th and 18th centuries. This concept refers not simply to elegant rural residences, but to an entire way of organizing architecture, agriculture, economy, society, and territory into a coherent cultural landscape. The modular character of the Barchesa allows it to operate across multiple scales. Through repetition, it generates courtyards, squares, and settlement patterns that strengthen spatial relationship while contributing to natural climatic regulation. Over time, the Barchesa evolved from a pragmatic agricultural structure into a refined and increasingly monumental component of Venetian villa composition, as we can see on the diagrams nicely developed by Sophia Loss, how a simple model, two models, a combination of models, introducing new elements, and then becoming a fantastic villa. Yet, its logic extends even further. The portico streets of historical urban centers, which have been beautifully described as altruism turned into architecture, being in fact private property, often the public life, may be understood as urban multiplication of the Marquesa principle, as we can see in this Spanish square. Wonderful. The Venetian villa functioned simultaneous as an agricultural center and place of cultivated delight. Rather than an isolated residence placed within scenery, it was conceived as an integrated system of buildings, courtyards, orchards, gardens, and productive land. Through transitional elements such as portico and loggias, the main residence and its rural annexes became progressively woven together within the surrounding territory into a unified architectural and environmental composition. The villa thus emerged as the nucleus of a much larger territorial system connected to extensive agricultural estates. Fields, channels, barns, chapels, roads, and villages all belong to the same ordering framework, one sustained through major environmental interventions, drainage works, hydraulic system, river management, infrastructure, and plant cultivation. The countryside itself became a designated cultural landscape, not simply nature, but designed, a constructed territory shaped by the occupation, beliefs, systems, labor, and relation of power. Beyond its functional agricultural role, the villa served as the refined rural residence of its owner, a setting for otium, cultivated leisure, reflection, and intellectual life. The villa, therefore, became a symbolic vehicle expressing ideas of classical order, proportions, rationality, and the renewed relationship between human life and nature. Architecture was not merely shelter or representation of status. It was a carefully staged dialogue between the interiors and the landscape. This continuity between inside and outside was reinforced through well-proportioned interiors animated by frescoes, cycles depicting landscape, mythology, and imaginary worlds that extend in architectural space beyond its physical limits. Generous opening, admitting abundant light, while framing carefully composed views towards the gardens, conceived exterior rooms, spaces of colors, fragrance, movement, and sensory immersion. The boundary between architecture and landscape began to dissolve in this way. In the Salone of Villa Emo, Battista Zelotti frescoes enter into a sophisticated dialogue with Palladio's geometric order. Illusionistic painting expands architectural space, while linking mythological imagery to the cultivated agricultural world surrounding the villa. These ideas resonate strongly with Leon Battista Alberti's concept of concinitas, the emulation of nature's beauty towards order, proportion, coherence, and harmonious relations. For Alberti, beauty does not arise from decoration alone, but from an underlying structural logic modeled upon nature itself, understood as the supreme teacher of balance, growth, adaptation, and internal order. By studying and reinterpreting those principles, architecture can achieve a deeper harmony with its geographical and climatic context. Placement within the landscape, therefore, becomes more than a technical decision or aesthetical composition. It became an act of intelligence alignment with larger environmental and spatial orders. In the humanist imagination, the cultivated landscape complemented the rural villa as a place for a philosophical retreat. Geometry, cultivation, architecture, and ecology were intended to operate together, integrating human intervention within a broader living system and aspiring towards the sense of inevitability and organic completeness we often recognize in natural forms. In the oration on the dignity of man, Pico della Mirandola proposes that humanity was placed in the center of the cosmos so that human beings might freely observe, shape, and choose their own nature. Reviving classical tradition, the Renaissance villa became a kind of microcosm through which the Homo Universale could explore humanity's relationship with the world. By bringing together natura naturans, the nature generating, and natura naturata, nature generated, the villa emerged as an intellectual construct founded upon a deliberate dialogue between architecture and territory. The resulting landscape was therefore more than scenery. It became an abstract projection of an ideal order, blurring the boundaries between nature and artifice. Dennis Cosgrove recognized this deeper dimension of the so-called Palladian landscape. It was not simply beautiful countryside, but a visual ideology, a political and cultural expression of how elite organized territory perceived the world and understood themselves within. Exploring further the multiple layer of meanings embodied by the villa, we may recognize within there is a persistent human longing for an earthly paradise, an aspiration that resonates with the symbolic tradition of historical Garden of the East, as we saw in the previous presentation. Positioned along carefully studied axes, alignments, and relationship with the landscape, the Renaissance villa can be understood not only as a residence, but as a sacred center, a symbolic Garden of Eden, connected the human world with the divine realm. Influenced by Neoplatonic traditions, Renaissance thinkers often understood harmonious proportion not merely aesthetically, but anagogically as a means through which material form could guide the mind towards higher orders of meaning. In this reading, another axis becomes to appear, the axis mundi, a vertical dimension linking landscape, architecture, symbolism, and transcendence. Mircea Eliade reminds us that symbolic thinking is not a primitive residue of the past, but a fundamental and transcultural structure of the human consciousness, one of our deepest ways of orienting ourselves within reality. I wanted to illustrate this special part of the presentation with personal, and some of us lived this experience a few days ago when the light aligned perfectly through the villa. And we had a fantastic combination of architecture, light, and music, because Eusebio chants some odes to the light and to the nature, and that was a real anagogically experience in the most perfect form. Remaining within this metaphorical territory, I would like to recall the celebrated 18th century landscape improver, Lancelot Capability Brown, and his striking but poetical description of shaping the land. Now there, he said, pointing a finger, I made a comma, and there, pointing to another spot. There is more decided turn. It's proper, I made a colon. At another part, where an interruption is desirable, to break the view, a parenthesis. Now a full stop. And then I began another subject. Brown's way of writing the landscape inevitably brings to my mind the work of Maria Lai, the great Sardinian artist, whose delicate threads of imagination sewed countless webs of significance in her emotional maps. This one, it's a sample, not very visible, unfortunately. So, sewed countless webs of significance with her emotional maps, tying the visible with the invisible, the community and the landscape, and the present with the memory. In her project, Legarsi alla Montana, Binding the Mountains, in 1981, working with minimal means yet involving entire communities within her artistic processes, Lai transformed participatory practice into a subtle exploration of fragility, memory, death, imagination, and transcendence. Landscape, in this expanding sense, becomes not only something inhabited or observed, but a process narrated, woven, and collectively authored. It is hardly surprising that maps, projection, and spatial representation have occupied the collective imagination across centuries. Maps do more than describing territory. When persuasive, they invite us to inhabit space imaginatively, emotionally, and conceptually. Drawing perhaps upon ancient cartographic tradition, where the cartographers used the Latin phrase hic sunt leones or dracones to indicate unknown and unexplored lands, where only lions and other exotic danger animals used to live, as this ancient Carta Marina. Madeleine de Scudéry's celebrated card tendre, this one, transformed the terrain of human affection into navigable geography. Yet this allegorical map is far from literary playfulness. Its deeper significance lies in the capacity to render human emotional life into navigable geography, making inner experience legible, ethical, and spatial. Touching on what we today call inner landscapes, the Cart of Tendre is ultimately a reminder that every landscape, emotional, social, or architectural, emerges from way of perceiving, orienting, and giving meaning to the world. Contemporary environment thinkers increasingly suggest that the ecological crisis is not technological, economical, or political, but also a crisis of perception, imagination, and interiority. Consumerism, extraction, acceleration, and disconnection may be understood not merely as external system, but as expression of impoverished inner landscapes. On the contrary, sustainable practices of awareness often involve cultivating belonging, understanding local values and traditions, a sense of continuity, identity coherence, reflection, patience, and meaning-making. Inner and outer landscape should therefore be understood as mutually constitutive rather than separate domains. In this broader sense, inner landscapes are not merely metaphors. They describe the dynamic terrains through which individuals experience identity, memory, emotion, meaning, and belonging. To conclude, as architects and building environment professionals, we must remain deeply committed to sustainability and responsibility stewardship of our planet's finite resources. Yet, perhaps the most durable foundation of sustainability lies elsewhere as well, in the grounded individual, someone capable of navigating their inner landscape, reading their emotional terrain with clarity, and allowing external decision to emerge from genuine inner alignment. This is precisely what makes architecture such a profound responsibility. Consciously or unconsciously, we project our internal worlds into the environments we create. The spaces we design inevitably become reflections of the emotional, psychological, ethical, and spiritual maps we carry within ourselves. Learning from the wisdom of the past, from our predecessors' capacity to understand the world in its complexity and to build in harmony with it, allows us today to walk the landscape with greater awareness, sensitivity, humility, and purpose. Léon Krier was our finest guide in finding this inner truth, uplifting us not only with his visionary way of seeing the world, but with his endless kindness and empathy, and above all, with his uncompromising devotion to the truth. Thank you very much for joining me in this very subjective and imaginative journey, and I am happy that somehow all the ideas that I present here were somehow percolating all this conference around the space. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Georgia, for this inspiring presentation. It was very, very beautiful. And also thank you for recalling that foundational text of Italian and European humanism, which is Pico della Mirandola's oration on the dignity of man. That's a text that our students also every year read with enthusiasm, because on it we can find some of the seeds that will later on blossom in different and important ideas in the Renaissance. And one of the central elements in the very beginning of the oration is the magnum miraculum est homo. Human beings are a marvelous thing, a great miracle. And I think that you showed to us very well one of the deepest meanings of this sentence, because we saw how through the transformation of the environment in which we are, human beings are also reflecting and operating. One of the things that maybe shows in the most relevant way, it's his dignity. That is the way, or the possibility to participate in creation. Because as God created the macrocosmos, also the human beings can create the environment in which they live. And this means that they also make out of this environment, make out of these buildings, a sort of cloister of meaning and of also ideas. Another very beautiful sentence that you said is that by preserving and cultivating traditional architecture and vernacular also architecture, we are preserving a sort of collective memory of the places. And this links me and gives me the cue to present our next speaker, who is Ulrich Gehmann, who is the director of this foundation, which is called the Ideal Spaces, which is settled in Switzerland and in Germany, maybe, Germany, yes, excuse me, and which deals with the creation of communities and the link that the communities have with the history of ideas and how they are linked and rooted in the place in which they are. So please welcome our next speaker. Yes, if you want to have it.
I can use it. Wait. Yes, hello, ladies and gentlemen. You want all go to dinner to eat, I know. I will be very short. I'm glad to be here. And I want to concentrate on a non-architectural theme. We named it, in preparing this presentation, Place of the Placeless. It's about general relationships between place, architecture, and central basic assumptions, particularly rooted in our culture, about the relation between place, space, architecture, and the idea of democracy in the end, and of the free citizen. When we start, what is the entire context? It's the bond between humans and the environment, which has been addressed here in the previous presentations. And we can conceive very formal environment as space and as a socio-spatial environment. We are social animals, but in the end we live in spaces, either in real spaces, in imagined spaces, in virtual spaces. We live in spaces. And here we have two possibilities to conceive the space. On the one hand, we can conceive it as spatium. This is a conception going back to Descartes, but had been addressed and realized partially also in Roman times already with this latifundia construction. It's a conception of space, to conceive space as a rational entity in the end. A space can be geometrical, a space can be made, it can be parcelled, it can be controlled, it can be completely designed, independent from the individuality of the respective space. The individuality of the space doesn't matter. We conceive in this spatium concept, we conceive the space as an abstraction, as an essentially neutral extension, as a metric space of geometry and construction. Another conception of the space is the space as place. This is the topos. It is a concrete life world and a space of concrete surroundings. How we live here, for instance, in this particular place we inhabit. How we are here in this particular place of the audience here. This is a topos. And a topos has specific characteristics, and humans and their environments, the central question here is, what happens with humans when their places become just spaces, following the logic of the spatium, of the neutral extension, and of the controlled and makeability of the space according to rational means. We have one line of development from this conception of the spatium to the internet spaces invented in the 90s, the so-called cyberspace. It's an ingraspable space, but nonetheless it is constructed. It is completely constructed by algorithms. The next is to give examples from our real life worlds. We have, as an example for the concept of space as a spatium, we have a photo from a business district. This was from San Francisco, California. This is a good example of what it means to have a space as a neutral, geometrical, and in the end, controllable extension. You can build anything inside it. No? And on the other hand, on the right side, this is the Campo, also the main piazza, the main place in Siena. This is an example of a topos. This is a concrete space as place where people can develop a feeling of belonging, a feeling of identity. It is an individual space. Compared to the space on the left side, the spatium in San Francisco, the single buildings may look individual, but they are, in their essence, exchangeable. They follow the same rationality of geometric construction. They follow the same rationality of the spatium. We have, as a further extension, the world as a non-place. This non-place refers to utopia in its Greek original meaning. Utopia, the utopos, is the non-place, and this can have an ambivalent meaning. On the one hand, it is the place we have not reached yet, a place which does not exist with the undertone, but we want to exist in this place in the future. We have a longing for this place, the oitopia, the oitopos. And on the other hand, utopia, the non-topos, the utopos, could be a place where humans cannot exist, because this place is inhuman, essentially. As we see in this example, this is a photo from the Frankfurt airport, and you see only the horizon, and you see the technological construction following the mindset, the mentality of the spatium. Here you have it in clearest forms, so to speak. Okay. Opposed, we have the topos as the anthropological place, Again, this is an example from the Campo of Siena. What means a concrete place? And when we compare these two images of the Frankfurt airport and of the topos presented here, I think it becomes very clear where the essential difference lies in the mindset of how to conceive space and human beings in space at all. The next is, this is a fresco from an Italian Renaissance artist from 1443, also in the midst of when the Renaissance gained a momentum. And the essence is this idea, the concept of the città felice, the happy city, and opposed to the utopias to come after the Renaissance, with a certain preconception of how human beings should be, and related with a preconception of how architecture for those human beings, conceived as ideal ones, should be. Here we have no social engineering yet. All the people, no matter their kind, no matter their character, no matter their individuality in the respective case, all these human beings can live in one and the same city. This is the happy city, the città felice. And building on the city, essentially, is building on society. We can translate this principle also into the recent cities, into the modern cities. Also here, building on the city is a building on society. If you live in cities like those presented in this San Francisco Business District example, this too is a building on society, because this architecture too influences human beings. The anthropological place, this is a concept by the anthropologist Marc Auger, as anthropology, first of all. What is anthropology literally? Anthropology is the logos, the meaning of the human being. Logos is not only word, logos is also a meaning of something. No? For instance, when we speak today about the inner logic according to which a certain process is going, this is the meaning of something, is logos too. And anthropology, as the logos of the human being, leads, amongst others, to the anthropological place, this place from Marc Auger as a concept. It's a place of identity, a place of relations, and a place of history. And these qualities cannot be created directly, they cannot be constructed, but they have to grow, they have to evolve over time. The basic relation between identity and history is expressed in this generative aspect. We can create architecture. We can create the architecture of a città felice, for instance. This all we can create more or less immediately. But history, as an essential element of the anthropological place, we cannot create history, we cannot create evolution. This has to be generated, it has to grow over time. And this distinction between creation and generation is very important. Place, identity, culture. Identity cannot be created. Identity grows over time. Identity is generated. And the modern worldview opposed to that rests on the basic assumptions that we are able to create identity, and second, that we are able to create identities in every relevant domain of life, from physical architectures to social media. The point is, another aspect, identity needs place, not just space, not just a spatium, not just a rational, logical construction. And related culture needs place and time to unfold. And culture needs heritage. And heritage is more than just tradition. Heritage is what I've got from the past, and I can reject it, I can further develop it, I can conserve it, but I've got it. Heritage includes an active element. And what happens when cultural heritage is lost? What about humans and their environments and then? And this is the recent situation of modern and modernist architecture we address these days. Created identities, an example. We have here an old house from a German town, an old house where the house had still individual names and not just numbers. And below we have a created identity. It's the identity of a company. It's a Benetton identity, which is no identity, it's just a brand mark. And the wish is that it shall become an identity, that people identify themselves with a certain product in this example. This is no real identity. You cannot create identities, even if you try, as it is presented here. The created identity and the fictive are very related to each other. For instance, as regards the fictive, when we look at this interior here, they have presentations of virtual worlds looking into landscape. It's a fictive world. These landscapes are fictive. No? This landscape here out is real. These are conceptions of worlds as they could be. And they could provide an identity if we can imagine to live in a world of such a style. But it remains fictive and it remains created. And today we have a created identity and the fictive, these relations, in total different domains and in total different dimensions at the same time. And therefore I choose this image here. These are the Pokemons and Pikachu figures, no, on a garage wall in a French city, and that's it. Also, this is the new identity. No? Over-exaggerated, as you want. Here we are. Here we stand, meanwhile, in our historical process. Fictitious identities. They rest on the basic assumption that an identity can be created from the branding of products to social media contents. Even cities, as the home of the former zoon politikon, according to Aristoteles, the animal that lives in the polis, even cities can become brands, which means, translated, everything in the world became a product, an entity to be marketed, not only to be produced, but to be marketed. And this means that everything in the world, in principle, can become a commodity. And commodities don't need cultural heritage. They are produced. And therefore, their identity can be produced, means created as you want it. But identity essentially cannot be created. And this is a misleading, a basic assumption that we can create identities, ongoing, on many different things, and that they are real identities then. This is the utopian dream of the marketing departments, but not the human, the psychic and social reality in the end. Good. In a literal sense, from Latin privare, the world became privatized, robbed of, depleted of meaning. When everything is a product, it is privatized. A privare means to take something away, to rob it. Also if this microphone is taken away, I'm robbed of this microphone. And privatization as a certain way of living rests on the robbing of essential elements of spirituality, of soul, of belonging. It's only about products. It's only about the spatium, the rational space of how to produce and how to market products. It's a complete rational procedure. Good. Here we have an example of utopian places produced in this way. It was an advertising at the Milano-Venezia autostrada at a gasoline station. And here the local place or the places of a local culture in the near of Brescia, so, are presented as a utopian world. We see happy consumers served by the waiter. We see local traditions and crafts, as like this man with the iron. We see a, let's say, romantic, means original, historically grown landscape, and they are all mixed together in a virtual fictive identity. And you, as the passenger traveling by on the Autostrada, you have to visit this local original identity in order to market it in the end. It's not about a local identity and its peculiarity, it's about to market it. It's a product of this landscape and not the landscape itself. Here we have this modern concept or this further development of utopia into Schlaraffia. This is the new utopos, the non-place of recent consumer societies. Interestingly, when the first tractate on utopia by Thomas Morus has been published at the beginning of the 16th century, there came a response from Sebastian Brandt, and he developed Schlaraffia. This is the individual utopia. This is the dream of the individualized human being as a consumer. He, she does not need utopias. He needs just the utopos of a Schlaraffia. And here we have its ideal presentation. It's an ideal landscape, an ideal space, completely fictive. We have a new heavenly city even related to cultural heritage. When we believe in this, I will come to this point shortly, when we live in this basic historical image, there has been a first paradise, there has been an intermedium, the world we live in, and in the end there will be a second final paradise. And this second final paradise is exemplified and symbolized by the heavenly city. Here we have the version of the new heavenly city. This is the layout plan of a so-called consumer city or consumer village, which is no city and no village, just an aggregation of shops for consume. This is the new heavenly city in the Schlaraffia conception of the utopos, of the non-place. So, we have cultural heritage, real cultural heritage even, as an infinite tourist attraction. This is another aspect of how a world as brand and branded agglomeration of products will look like. It is per intention, it is as infinite as the central axis in Versailles here. We have created identities as utopian hope. This is a very interesting and nice painting I found in Madeira. These are, you can interpret them as 3 different doors to paradise, with their waterfalls and the symbolic meaning of water and everything, but it is a created identity. And it is a created identity as a utopian hope. It is not just an identity as a Schlaraffia hope, as in the case of this advertising on the Italian Autostrada I show. It is hope. And this is a very strong point of identity and of utopia altogether, hope. And the point is that the bulk of utopian concepts came after the Renaissance. Shortly after the Renaissance, means when the world gets more and more modern, means rational from its mindset, from the 17th century onwards with the ongoing success of the natural sciences. It's not against the success, it's not a point, it's a point of the mindset. When the Accademia del Cimento was founded in Florence, their explicit the explicit procedure was we only rely on experiments. We rely only what we can prove, which sounds reasonable at first hand, clear. Yeah? And as has been presented from the Pakistan presentation, rationality and ergo the spatium is a means, it is techne, and according to Aristoteles, techne is that what nature is not able to deliver. This is techne. And an undertone of techne is machana. Mechanics comes from there, our word mechanics. Machana originally is an instrument of war. Means with mechanics we go against the nature, against that what exists, which is neither bad nor good. It's just an instrument. So when I, for instance, to go against nature, when I want to plug a field, I cannot leave the scrub in the field. I go against the nature existing now. It's a scrub. But if we extend this principle without any limitation, without any spirituality, and this was at the point of the presentation from Pakistan, then we end in the way we are here now. We have created identity, another example. This is it's a standard case of the modern utopias. This is an example from our Venice Biennale exhibition 2016, where we dealt with a sequence of ideal cities presented as ideal life worlds. An Italian scholar said, ideal cities should not be named ideal, they are symbolic cities. This is very important. For instance, this kind of presented ideal city, it's Tony Garnier. It's from the beginning of the 20th century, and he was one of the guys who tried still to concile an inherently endless industrial production following an endless flow of production, Henry Ford, the principle, to concile it with a human life. And therefore he created an ideal city, he called it a cité industrielle, the industrial city, where humans can live human, despite they have an industrial production. Here you see a created identity as a new place for humans. Here, humans can live and prosper. This is the modern version of the Città Felice. Okay, here we have cultural heritage comes into play. As I addressed it already, according to the basic image of history we have in the West, I make it very simple. We proceed from a first to a second paradise, and in the midst, in the world we live, in the history we know, this is an interregnum. It's a reign in between. So here we have a very essential element from our cultural heritage is the first paradise. And this is a Baroque painting in a cloister near Ulm in Germany. It's splendid, where you see these Baroque figures of architecture, of civilization coming up. The people, human beings, are extracted from paradise. They are put into civilization, and this is mythologically backed up. Cain, the murderer of Abel, was the founder of the first city. And his offspring, Tubal-Cain, was the technician. This was the master of technique. And what he did, like Prometheus, he was a master in the arts of fire, which means he transforms naturally existing elements to make something completely different out of them. This is art, artifact as an art and technique altogether. But it is a step in the evolution, mythologically expressed. And here we have it in these Baroque artifacts, these architectural artifacts. It is an irreversible process. We had to leave our first paradise, means our natural surroundings. From the very first beginnings to the ecological demonstrations of today, we lost it. I will hurry up. Food is calling, I know. No? And here is a recent interpretation. We were given paradise, and you see this world mountain of garbage, no? Crowned by an extra garbage. No? We were given paradise. This is our basic belief, our basic utopian hope in our cultural sphere of the Occident. And here we have another part of cultural heritage, it is abstraction. Utopia, the utopos, the non-place, even if longed for, if wished for, relates to abstraction. What means abstraction? It is abstrahere. It is to refrain from the concretely given and look for some common general elements. This given here has, and we can compare it with another given. In any case, it's a process of abstraction. And little wonder that the Western, the Occidental utopias and the architectural constructions of utopias are very abstract. You can draw a line here from the Gothic cathedral also to the internet, to the cyberspace. The Gothic cathedral is the first example of a cybernetic system cast in stone, with its forces and counterforces. And we have the further development. This is part of a business district in La Défense, near Paris. These are the new business cathedrals in symbolic and real terms. The next point related of cultural heritage is the world as function. This is a photo to exemplify it in symbolic terms. It's a simple staircase in an airport hotel. And here you see the principle to achieve a world as function in its clearest form. We format and we functionalize the concretely given via abstraction and to form, like Tubal-Cain, the Smith, and to transform it into something new, completely different. This is not natural. And related is a myth of domination. A world as function can be completely planned and completely controlled. The emphasis is on completely. The mythic wish is this completely. It does not succeed, of course, but the wish is present. So, we have utopia as an abstraction. This is also from our 2016 Venice Biennale exhibition. This is another ideal world from the early 60s. It shows a combination of traffic ways and individual settlements. And the principle is we have individual paradises. Paradise is no longer a community issue in strict sense, in sensu stricto. It is an individual issue. I live in an individual paradise, in a paradise cage. And this cage, at the world as spatium, as grid, this can extend forever, in principle. There can many individual paradises. And the end point of this individual paradise is the bubble in social media. We have the world as a technotope, as a technotopos. No? It is a place, but it's a technical place. This is an example if we use images in their symbolic qualities. This is an example, it's just a photo I took from the Audi Museum in Germany. It's the interior of the museum. And here we have the technotopos in one of its expressions, in one of its symbolic expressions. Okay, so we have the value chain. The cosmos has been addressed today. The very perfect, I call it very perfect, expression of a modern cosmos, a mixture between reality and utopia as a realized utopia, is the value chain. It's a new mechanismus cosmicus. This was a notion from the 17th century, also from the rise of the natural sciences, that we were able to find, following this idea of God, the elegans architectus from the medieval ages and later from God as the clockmaker. There must be a mechanismus cosmicus. And if we can find out what these mechanisms is, or these mechanisms are, we will be able to understand the world, how the world is ticking in literal terms. The new mechanismus cosmicus, coming back to the old medieval idea of the perpetuum mobile, the ever-moving apparatus, the ever-moving machine, is the value chain. The value chain is basic instrument of cosmic properties in today's economies, in capitalist economies, first of all. We have inputs, we have a transformation of these inputs into outputs. This is the central process. And the central process, also this is Tubalcain today. No? From Tubalcain to any bank, to any company in the world. No? We have the value chain. It's a pure abstraction. It's spatium is a pure abstraction, but nonetheless, it generates psychic, mental, social, and economic realities, namely the world we live in today. Max Weber said the capitalist system is a universal cosmos nobody can escape. This he said at the beginning of the 20th century. This capitalist system is not a cosmos. It's just a mechanism. And the very idea, the essence of this mechanism, here's the value chain. We have to use it in business, and it is using us. There is a very, very good author, a German author, Günther Anders, who already said in the 1940s, in the Antiquiertheit des Menschen, the being antiquated of the human being, we think that we are free. And that we are free individuals and can use the world as application, as an app. But we are not free, because other people long decided what we can do and what not. The value chain is one aspect. So, and then we have the final point of our cultural heritage. This is the new immaterial space. It's even not an utopos, it's a topic. This is the internet. As it started in the 1990s, and one of its founders, to show parallels in terms of cultural heritage, one of its founders said, Howard Rheingold, no? It is like a heavenly Jerusalem. Imagine. The utopian hope was that with the new internet, as the so-called cyberspace of those times, it will be possible that everybody can act free, more free than ever before in human history. He can be his own creator, he can be his own, and so on and so on. Means we have an image of the human as an individual, as a consequent individual. It's no longer about common goods and about community, communitas. It's about the individuum. And the belief is, this image of the human, it's a belief in the end, that the individual is more or less omnipotent, at least in principle, and can act as he wants in applying the world as app, as an application. We all have our apps here. Means we take fragments of a real world or fragments of a psychologically real world from our internet bubbles, and we put them again together as we like it. And this is freedom. The Greek called it hybris. Hybris is the transcendence of cosmic boundaries. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gehmann, for this profound and philosophical insight of many of the things that we have seen today, but with this perspective, which is, of course, very, very interesting and very important also. I was thinking while I was listening to you that it may not be a coincidence that this literary genre that was born immediately after the Renaissance, as you mentioned about the utopia, gradually in the modern days, and we see it also in modern popular culture. It has gradually become the dystopia. No? So now everybody is trying to imagine the different catastrophes of the system in which we are living. No? Why? Because they feel, as you very well explained with arguments and philosophical concepts, but I think that many people feel that the society in which we are living, which is partly a fictitious society because of all the abstraction that is now the sort of mechanisms that is behind it, is a sort of, I often think of it as a sort of this marriage between a delirant instrumental reason and the will of power, no? The Wille zur Macht that Nietzsche talked about. And this wedding have begot many of the modern societies that we have and many of the problems that we are facing now because human beings feel to be just a number in the equation, no? Just a sort of a function in a bigger machine that makes out of them not more human beings, but just numbers without identity. And as soon as they feel themselves devoided of identity, privated of the identity, they become, of course, like a sort of a vase in which you can create, or at least try to create identity, which is very functional also for different powers to manage human beings as if they were just puppets in this big theater of power and hubris, as he said very well. So it's really, I think, an excellent closure for this session. And we have, I think we all have many questions that we would like to put. I don't know if we have at least 5 or 10 minutes so that we can open the discussion. It's 5 minutes. Okay, so I may ask maybe the 3 speakers that we had to take their places in the table, and if anyone has some commentary or question, to come here so that the people who is following can see you. Is Vitor also here? He's not.
A question about difference among space and place. What do you think about this? If I understand, place is a space characterized by a complex superpositions of different layers, historically determined, layers as model of use that have the capability to be reused in time. A space is an abstraction. Do you think that it's a right interpretation about, because I think that modernism refused the idea of history as a process and create a fracture, vertical fracture, among the past and what we consider the modern, the contemporary. Before the Industrial Revolution, there was a continuous process of use-reuse, sometimes erasing the previous model of use, sometimes reusing it completely or in part. Modern don't accept it. Okay, history, history, and sometimes we have to preserve it, but it's a different space, and the space of modernity, of contemporary, is something completely different. And because it's utopian space, it's a fixed one and is not able to be reused and transformed in time. I don't know if you agree about this interpretation.
Okay, one by one. Let me begin with what you called the modernist space. I think the very principle underlying the generation of the modernist space is its willing creation as a rational concept devoted to a calculus of profitability and efficiency. And de facto creation of the modernist space started with industrialization and the principle underlying the process of industrialization. The principle is to produce in an uninterrupted flow. This is new compared to pre-modern times. By historians, pre-modern times have been characterized as so-called wooden societies because they had no energy supplies in forms of coal. Coal was able to make steel construction plus coal was able to achieve an uninterrupted process of production, a completely new thing. As a craftsman, let's say as a Baroque craftsman who painted these walls, I have a specific product, I have a specific demand, make this image. In an uninterrupted process of production, I have products which are more or less formatted, means the same, means uniform, from cars to buildings, because I have to follow a maxim of profitability and efficiency all the time. Plus, I have an uninterrupted production process all the time, as a by principle. No? And this generates a modern space. It creates ugly architectures in the first instance, as a production facilities, new infrastructural networks, and all the junk landscapes around our cities today, this gasoline station, supermarkets, etc., etc. In the first instance, it creates an ugly space. In the second instance, as an evolutionary consequence, so to say, it generates an inhuman landscape. As regards your second point with the layers, of course there are still layers in space. They are existing. We have historical layers. Here we have Roman layers, we have Baroque layers, and so on, next to the modernist space. But the point is, and this is this cultural heritage point, the point is, are we conscious about these layers first? And second, do we want to accept them as a heritage? Means, do we want to use them in a productive way to further develop them into something new? Or is this just tradition? We have some Roman remnants, we have some Baroque villas. Hey, we don't care about it. We live in Miami and we want $4 million for Villa Y, and then we go to Miami. We do not accept our heritage. Here the layers, the idea of layers becomes obsolete in the minute, because I, as an individual, do no longer care about my heritage. Question answered or not? Huh? Good, okay.
We still have time for one. Yes, please. Maybe just one last question, and then we will go to lunch.
I have other questions about like heterotopia and like relationships with different triads, but I think a good question to ask is, do you think it's possible to judge the abstraction, or it's more about like looking the substance that's behind the abstractions? Because when you're because we have a lot of architects and urbanists here, and I was particularly interested in the Biennale idea, was like that version of Cosmos, which is an abstraction, but you know, there's also the medieval courtyard, like closed cloister, but that's also like abstraction. But do you think, can we judge those abstractions, or it's more about getting to the ideologies and like the things behind it? Like, can you judge the abstraction itself, or you suggest to like not judge the abstractions themselves? Like, can we say like it's a good abstraction, it's a bad, like can we make evaluations of the abstraction and the representation?
As regards abstraction, abstraction is neither good nor bad. Abstraction is a procedure to comprehend and to shape reality, whichever reality it is. As regards judgments about abstraction, if we conceive judgments according to Kant as moral judgments, then we settle on certain assumptions about the human condition. We have a certain image of the human, about the conditio humana in general. In our Western case, in our culture, we settle on the assumption about the human, that the human is essentially free, means it is essentially self-destined. I deliberately say it to the individual, and it is able to maximize its own utilistic needs in this world. This is a typical modern post-Enlightenment image of the human we have today. If we judge abstraction from this point of view, also following this image of the human, abstraction is a good thing in the end, because it helps to foster my individual freedom of consuming the world. Okay, and if I conceive myself as an individual, also this Sebastian Brand-Raffia concept, then I need abstraction as a basic mindset plus as a concrete daily means to maximize my individual, what we call it, purpose or benefit, because I'm alone. And this started interestingly, and then I'm silent. This started interestingly with Pico della Mirandola. So this, in the dignity of man, when God created the world, he put the man in the middle of this world according to God's own word, symbolic in the middle. And he said to man, look, all other creatures have their cosmic and their cosmological position. You are the only being who is free. You can go wherever you want, you can do whatever you want, you can do anything you want. At first sight, it sounds like a promise, but it is ambivalent. And one of its outcomes is the world we live in. Means abstraction is neither good nor bad. We cannot judge abstraction as independent from the perspective we take. And the perspective in the end is a Kantian perspective of a moral judgment. And then we can, judge abstraction. Oof.
It's a pity that we don't have time to go forward with other questions also for the two other presenters, which made a fantastic presentation. Both Georgia, yours was absolutely fantastic. Thank you. But at the end, we are going back on Ulrich final. But this is not a question. This is an interesting thought, because one of your last sentences talking about these, let's say, immaterial space that is the web. You made a sentence on talking about the freedom, this slogan of the Holy Jerusalem. And it's exactly the same one that in the 60s was used by Vittorio Gregotti to promote his district Zen in Palermo, which is one of the worst places on this planet. But that was presented as the New Jerusalem, the classless society place. And when a journalist asked him, would you like to live there? He was saying, there are no conditions. By the way, classless society, he said, no, there are no condition to live there. I'm doing the architect, not the proletarian. Sorry. So we invite you all downstairs for lunch. And by the way, as we said, at 4:30, we move to Villa Mondragone. So stay around because there is a shuttle service to bring you up there. No? 2:30. Let's say 2:45.